Before we dive into today's show, let me tell you more about one of my favorite platforms that all of you have probably heard me talk about way too much. As an independent business owner, you have big goals for 2025, right? Well, HoneyBook has big savings on the tools that can help you achieve them. HoneyBook is a client relationship platform that helps independents like you manage clients and projects with ease and confidence. With easy-to-use tools that create elevated client experiences, HoneyBook makes running your business and getting paid on time simpler. Get any annual HoneyBook plan for 25% off by going to honeybook.com and using the code CYBER24 between November 26th and December 4th of 2024, or click the link in the show notes below. Now on to the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Summer School. Today, we're here with another awesome guest. We're here with Kayleigh Taylor from, I'm pretty sure, Florida. Yeah?
Yep.
And she's so talented. I've been following her for quite a long time, seen her grow literally over the years. I feel like I've been following you kind of like since the beginning. So it's been a super cool journey. And her work is just so good. So you guys, I'm going to let Kayleigh tell you a little bit about herself. But if you haven't seen her work, go stalk it. Literally such good film work, such good tones. I love it all. So I'm super excited to chat today with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Like Summer said, I am a destination wedding photographer. I'm currently based in Florida. I've only lived here for a couple years, though. I started my business up in Virginia, and then when I moved here, I was kind of like in this transition period where I didn't really have any work in Florida because I didn't know a single person here and I didn't have any business established here. So it's kind of when I made the switch to destination weddings. And now I really don't shoot anywhere local. It's just kind of wherever couples are willing to take me. And most of my work now is film based, but it's just kind of focusing on this really like hyper romantic version of like capturing people. So yeah.
Do you have a certain area you actually frequent more than others, or is it truly just anywhere?
I guess it kind of depends if we're talking like big regions versus small. Like I feel like if it's like West Coast, it's pretty much just California. But if it's like East Coast, I feel like I'm never really in the same state. And then Europe is always just like, there's so many different countries. But I feel like for the most part, I would say like California, East Coast, and Europe based. I've done some stuff like in Mexico, but I haven't really ventured out into like Asia, South America, Australia, stuff like that.
That's amazing. That's going to be the topic we kind of dive into on the forefront. We're going to talk a little bit about film for everyone listening, but we're going to dive into destination weddings. Outside of the move to Florida and you just being in a new region, was there anything that specifically brought you into destination wedding work? Were you attracted to it initially? Do you love traveling, or did it just kind of happen for you?
Honestly, no, not at all. I like growing up, my family, we were just like homebodies. Like they never really had any itch for traveling. So like we might go on like a road trip and we would make this big event out of it, but it would be like a 2-hour drive. Like that was pretty much the extent of our traveling. I had absolutely no experience. And then once I kind of like moved out and was on my own a little bit, I tried the whole travel life a little bit and honestly was not a big fan. And to this day, like I still just don't like traveling. It's so funny because I see so many people that it's like it's their dream, like they just love the food and the cultures and experiences, and I'm just like so content to stay at home. But I definitely did not try to become a destination wedding photographer. I think it was just more so like the timing that I got into it. When I did the move to Florida, that was like right when reels were becoming popular, and so I kind of jumped on that bandwagon and took advantage of it. And I noticed with that before, like I was really just targeting local geographics, like with photo posts on Instagram, but reels just really took like all location boundaries off of that and just started pushing it out all over the place. And I would like check the insights and see like, oh wow, like there's a lot of West Coast viewers on this, there's people in Europe that are viewing this, like it's just kind of going everywhere, and it's no longer just like my county or my state that I was living in. And then from there I was kind of able to um jump into it, even though I like fully was in moving to Florida like with the intention of like I'm gonna shoot beach weddings and everything's gonna be like warm and golden and palm trees and all this. And then I think like since I moved here 4 years ago, I've shot here maybe like 4 or 5 weddings. Like it's like one a year that I'll shoot here, which is just
Mm-hmm.
crazy because I was so excited for that, but then my style completely changed and now it's just like all over the place.
Would you say now enjoy the fact that you're a destination wedding photographer? Or is there a piece of you that's like, oh shoot, this is like a lot of work?
Definitely, the reason that I love it and I continue to do it is I just find like so much inspiration shooting in different environments and like different venues. I still don't like enjoy the aspect of like actually going to places and just like the whole craziness that goes into like the plane rides and the rental cars and finding a place to stay and finding, ways to get food and stuff. Like, especially, I've always had like a very limited diet. So it's not like I'm eating out every meal. Like, I'm always planning stuff so far in advance. Like, this is the grocery store I'm going to go to when I get there, and I'm going to book this Airbnb that has a stovetop. And like, there's just so much logistics to it that it just is normally hectic for me. But I just really love that I get to shoot in so many environments. And I like always, when I was growing up, like, and looking at other photographers that I admired, I was like, I just love how versatile their work looks. Like, none of it looks like it's just the duplicated stuff over and over again. Like, there's so many different landscapes, and people are shooting at the beach and the mountains and in the desert and, all these crazy places. And I just love that it was always like a surprise what you were going to see next from those photographers. And so I think I've just like latched onto that. And I love the surprise of being like, where am I going to shoot next? And like, what couples are going to inquire next. And I think that's just really like the thing that keeps, it all going.
No, for sure. I think honestly, for some people, that'd be the scary part of it. Like, I've never been to this venue. I have no idea what the lighting's going to be like, or how the weather's going to be, or who knows what that goes into destination weddings. Do you do anything specific in regards to that? The side that might scare people that might want to do destination weddings, but are like, I'm really comfortable with my local market, really comfortable shooting at the same venues. Do you do anything like to kind of prepare yourself for it? Do you research the venues, especially if you're traveling internationally? Do you show up early? Or are you just, I mean, honestly, for me, I feel like I kind of just show up and make it work. But
Hmm.
since you're more of a planner, like, do you actually do anything to kind of prepare yourself ahead of time for probably international weddings in specific, probably do require a little more of that. But yeah, do you do anything in those regards?
It's ironic because, like, I'm the most, like, type A person. I feel like that could be at the top of a type A chart, and when it comes to planning for a wedding, like, I really don't do that much prep work for it. I'll, like, obviously look at the venue online when I'm going through the inquiry and deciding, like, is this one that I'm gonna take on, and I can get, like, a good feel for it. But I'm not, like, a huge location scouter. I'll definitely get there, but I prefer to do it, like, early on the actual day. I just, like, when I was early on, and everybody was telling me that, like, you have to scout the venue, you have to go there the day before and like spend like hours there and figure out where you're going to shoot and all that. I just found I was like, okay, maybe I'm going on a Friday and it's like super overcast, and then I go on a Saturday for the actual wedding day and it's like blaring sun, and now all the spots that I picked look awful, and I'm like scatterbrained. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to like rework my entire plan. So normally I just go an hour or two early on the actual wedding day, take my time to walk it out, and I'm actually like getting a feel for the venue with the lighting that the day is going to provide. More so, like, what I'll do is pick out spots that I like. But then when it comes to the actual time, like if I'm saying like, oh, this one corner of this house that I'm shooting in like looks really beautiful, but then, 5, 6 hours later, if I come back to actually do bride and groom portraits there, I might be, drawn to something else that has like really good lighting or something. So it's all fluid. I never create like a hard plan like that. I'm just like always feel like I'm chasing light. But I try and keep some things in the back of my mind for like, I really like the architecture in this area or just like the way the landscape is. But I feel like part of being documentary is you just have to roll with the flow and kind of go with what
Hmm.
inspires you on the spot. And then those end up being like the better pictures, anyways.
No, I feel like that's also even like sometimes wedding clients questions too, like, oh, do you need to see the venue, do you need to go through a walkthrough, because maybe they're working with like a more local planner who's like used to like maybe photographers literally going to a walkthrough of the venue, and I'm like, I've done like one of those in my entire career, you know and I'm like, nah, like day of, like, we're good, I got you. If your planner
Hmm.
wants to send me photos of things, like, feel free, like, give me a diagram, but like, we'll be fine. It doesn't have to be that planned out, especially around photos. Even in some ways, I think then it puts like pressure on like all these moments that don't need that much pressure on them.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I'll have like some clients that on their inquiry form or like in our first couple emails will be like, have you ever shot at this venue or been to the venue? Like they're kind of like scared to bring in a photographer that hasn't been there before. And it's funny, like my response is always like, I normally only shoot at one venue like once. So every time that I shoot a wedding, I'm going somewhere I've never been before.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you can be confident that I'm going to deliver you the same experience, like regardless if I haven't been to your venue, like it's going to be the same as everybody else's.
No, 100%. Which honestly, the one time I did do a walkthrough, it was kind of fun, but it was only once because my couple, we had just moved to LA and I had booked them for LA when I was in Washington. And they were like, "Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "I've literally only lived here for like a week. Yeah, sure. Sounds fun." You know what I mean? And it was a more complicated wedding, like 300 people,
Mm,
fully indoors, lighting team. It was just something where I was like, I'm here, might as well. But it was the only time I've ever even had that opportunity because kind of like you, Instagram drove a lot of my marketing as well. And so I was never really shooting where I lived. I also didn't really advertise where I lived in the beginning. So some people ask like, how'd you get into traveling summer? And I'm like, no one even knew where I lived. I didn't have a local market. Like I know that maybe wasn't the best marketing tactic
mhm.
necessarily because I literally didn't have a local market. Now I'm like, yeah, I live in Southern California. Let's have a local market. It's beautiful here. I'm down to like not travel as much with a child.
Mhm,
Um, but for the beginning of my career, I didn't even put necessarily where I lived. I just put like abroad, like PNW, or
mhm,
um, I didn't put like Seattle wedding photographer because I didn't really want to be a Seattle wedding photographer. I didn't really I think there was also this weird part of with social media, I didn't really care for people to know where I lived. Like,
mm.
people that knew where I was going, that's fine, that's so niche, but I didn't know if I wanted the whole world to be like, "Oh, she lives in Tacoma." Like,
Yeah.
she lives and for most people, they really build their business off having a local market, having those vendor connections and having those relationships with all of the local people. I didn't even know that was really a thing because I was booking without that until maybe
Mhm,
like light bulb like 3 years into my career. And I was like, maybe I should like meet other vendors in my area, or at least in areas where I would work, maybe even if they're 4 or 5 hours away,
mhm. Yeah,
because I
it's
didn't
so
know.
interesting, like, how you kind of realize that you're cut off from, like, this whole sector of marketing, like, you can't do all of this, like, in-person stuff, and you're not gonna have a venue recommending you to, like, all of their future clients and stuff. You're really just kind of basing it off of social media, and even if you have, like, some word to mouth stuff, it has to like, the people that they're referring you to, like, also have to be willing to pay for the travel and stuff too. It's like,
Mhm.
the wedding may have been in your hometown, but then it's like, okay, like I traveled here, in order to shoot it. So
Yeah.
it's like really all social media for me. I don't know if it's the same way for you, but yeah, it's weird, like never really having tapped into any of those other marketing avenues.
No, yeah, that was me for a while. I'm totally down to like work a little more locally now and did push in-person networking, which there are, planners that are destination planners,
Hmm.
so even maybe in-person networking with events where people were flying all to the same event. Like I think I ended up meeting someone that you've actually worked with before, Anna Lucia. I think you've worked
Hmm.
with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I met her at an event too. So I have done now some in-person networking with people like a more destination event because in the luxury space it's like they all flew into this event, we all met each other. It wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily they're working with a really niche local market, but I was on one venue's list and we did work there like 4 weddings a year, which to me is like super a lot considering nothing else I was doing ever more than once. And
Yeah.
so when people would ask, like, do you have a local market? I'm like, this one place is sure my local market. It was like 5 hours from my house. I didn't even live near it. But I enjoyed shooting there. So it was kind of fine to have that one place that just like was easy to work at. I was down to go to. But yeah, now in LA, we are restructuring some. I am down to have a local market because we're having a kid and I don't necessarily need or want to travel as much. So we actually were restructuring our own marketing within the last like year to go to more events and build a more local base, which
Mm.
has been interesting. But Yeah, there are destination planners and stuff. So there are ways to connect with some people to where it's not just social media, but like what you said, even when you shoot a client, I feel like as a destination, like someone that they're choosing to fly out, even if you're not going international, they're just choosing to fly you like to New York or to Maine or who knows where. Oftentimes their friends don't necessarily have that same want and will within themselves, in my opinion. I don't still don't like referrals, not as common in my opinion when social media and flying to gigs is the majority of your bookings, was from my experience. I don't know if it was for you as well, but I think it's just like that client may have really valued it. The odds that they're like one friend that hasn't gotten married yet is going to really want to like fly someone to who knows where. I do feel like it's a little less likely than when you're working in a local town at like, a similar price range. Cause even travel, like the packages will be different for their friend and them, you
Mhm.
know?
That's so
So I don't
true.
know if you ran across that, but I feel like word of mouth is even probably like it's not that you're not gonna have no word of mouth, but I think it's gonna be a little less likely to have referrals when you're pursuing like a destination market.
Yeah, I will get like a couple every year, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. It really just comes down to at the end of the day, like what are the couple's priorities and what's their budget. But yeah, it's definitely it's far and few between.
Yeah. No, for sure. So there are some challenges. What would you say with destination weddings is like your absolute favorite part about it? If you
I
have a
think
favorite part.
Yeah, I think again, it's just like the versatility that it provides in my portfolio. Like I my like creativity needs absolutely requires like having new spaces. Like even if I shoot in like the same environment, like it might be a new venue, but like if everything around it looks the same, I just like find myself falling into just like a repetitiveness where I'm like repeating poses that I've done, or just kind of like the overall vibe and editing and like what I'm directing as the photographer. And so I just like, as like different and unique as any part of the wedding can be, whether it's like the design or if it's the venue or just like a landscape that I'm not used to. I'm just like, I will literally take anything unique. And like, of course, I still shoot stuff, that is similar to what I've done in the past. And you can always make it new based on the couple and their style and their interests and all that. But I just absolutely love like going somewhere and being like, I have never worked in this lighting before. Or like, like when I went to Santorini, I was like, wow, everything is like so white here and there's like light reflecting off of everything. And like, I never shoot in environments like this. Like even when it's super cloudy, it's just like reflections everywhere and it's like making, sometimes it's amazing light, sometimes it's really difficult harsh light, but I just like thrive off of that type of challenge. Like I need something to push me on a wedding day.
Mhm.
And so if I'm just like stuck in the same old, I'm like my creativity just goes down so fast.
You'll get like bored per se.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how I feel. I think part of the reason I even like larger scale, I started in smaller weddings, like more elopement-y things, and the reason I think I like large productions and large weddings now is I think I like the, like, chaos of it. Like,
Mhm.
I've owned it. I'm like, I kinda like the fact that there's so much going on because there's also so much to shoot. Like, it almost feels it's not that there's not stories with elopements, but it almost feels like there's more of a story to tell because
Mhm.
there's so many people interacting, there's so many things happening, there's so many experiences literally happening right in front of you that you can
Mhm.
document.
Mhm.
Whereas I think with the smaller things, sometimes they felt more like photo shoots. And I think it just eventually I just ended up not liking it as much, because I'm
Mhm.
like, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over
Yeah.
and over and over again. And for me, that wasn't fulfilling. So similar in your scenario, in my opinion. Do you have
Yeah.
anything outside of traveling, like outside of the fact that you don't love traveling? Do you have anything you actually don't enjoy about destination weddings? Or maybe it is traveling, but
I would say, like, honestly, I don't really have that many cons. Like, at least for destination weddings in the US, like, I really don't have anything like negative to talk on. I feel like for international, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes when you're working with like a language barrier or just like the venues will have different rules or restrictions. And a lot of times too, like I've worked with videographers that were not necessarily like maybe video wasn't really a high priority for the couple, and so they just booked somebody that was like local to the country that they were getting married in, and they're just been really bad experiences. I
Mm,
it just like I feel like the ethics of shooting are a little bit different in America than they are in some other countries. Like my experience with the videographers overseas has been that people will stand like 2 feet in front of the couple during the ceremony in the middle of the
holy
aisle and like
smokes.
for the first kiss and everything. Like I experienced that on my very first international wedding, and the ceremony was like really long, like the aisle, and so I didn't feel comfortable going all the way up and being like tapping the guy on his shoulder and being like, hey, can you get back at the very end? And thankfully I had a second shooter up at the very like front, like with the wedding party to like capture a side angle. But AI was not a thing back then, so I worked my butt off to Photoshop him out of it. But literally 2 feet in front of the couple, like I mean, he must have been using like a 35 millimeter because and like their faces would have been filling up the frame. He was so close. And it's just like everything is a little bit different, and it's sometimes hard to communicate to different vendors like, hey, this is kind of how I work, and like it would be good if we could be on the same page with things together. But if they're used to doing it one way, then it's they're just gonna stick with what is normal to them. um, and then I feel like the only other like downside to it is sometimes people will have like they really want you there, but if it's like an international event, travel can sometimes be something that pushes you out of the budget. I mean, realistically, like people can expect to spend anywhere from like $2,500 to $3,500, $4,000 for travel fees, because tickets are not cheap. And then if you're doing multiple day events, you're getting rental cars and gas and tolls, and paying international insurance is really expensive. So, just trying to, I guess, like communicate the value of like why they should hire somebody that's a destination photographer instead of just hiring somebody that's already there, can be like a little bit of a hiccup. But for those people that you really know what they want, like it normally isn't a problem. But overall, I would say like it's generally a good experience. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't keep doing it. I feel like it's my favorite weddings are always the ones that require the most travel. So if it was too much negative, I'd probably just cut it back to local, but I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives.
I love that you have so many positives considering you don't even really love traveling.
Yeah.
Like,
I
that's
dread it. I
amazing.
really do. But I get so excited when I actually get to the wedding day and I'm like, this is all worth it.
I think that's absolutely incredible. I had a thought pop in my mind. Oh yeah, I was helping with a wedding in England once. And like you said, like even just culturally, like I mean, maybe you're mostly shooting Americans in these other countries, but we were shooting like someone that's from England in England, and even just how people value weddings, no matter where you are in the world. It's going to be so different what they value about the wedding, like how a wedding functions. So, coming in there as Americans, there's a cake. We're assuming we should take a photo of a cake cutting. The like catering staff just like roast us, like totally like makes fun of us. They're like, oh, Americans. And we
Oh,
were
that's
like,
funny.
oh, sorry. But then the couple was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Yeah, sure. Take a photo of us cutting the cake. It's pretty. But like, it just wasn't something that I guess was common. And, even I've learned that about a lot of European weddings. They often are like less of a production than what we experience in like American, more Western, like Americanized weddings. And so,
Hmm.
American weddings in other countries are going to be more similar to American weddings in America. But, if you were shooting an Italian's wedding in Italy, like you're going to face a lot of differences in that capacity. But it was
Hmm.
just so funny, like them being like Americans, like, and just totally, they ended up apologizing later because the catering staff totally thought we were just like, you know, funny. Um, but it was interesting to kind of learn that as well. Just learn like how even in America, how we value weddings and like the production side of it, and how that wasn't as common, especially with that crowd that we were around in particular. And how even as far as how Europeans can even price themselves, like it's harder to make even the kind of income we make in America because
Hmm.
people that actually live in Europe they're not as commonly spending that kind of investment in weddings, in wedding photography, and those
Mhm.
sorts of things. So it was interesting to kind of just learn those dynamics shooting a wedding for not an American in another country. Um, yeah, it was. I'm sure you mostly are working with Americans who are also flying to these countries, but yeah, it was definitely different. Like working with an actual local. It was interesting.
Mhm. It's funny, like, sometimes they're strict in some ways, but, like, really loose in others. Like, I found that with European weddings, it's like it's such a small thing too, but it's like candles. Like, in the US, like, our restrictions on candles at weddings are so ridiculous. It's like they must be
Mm-hmm.
in, like, this super tall glass vase, and, like, I totally understand it. It's a fire hazard. But it's, like, funny in Europe, like, they're just like, just have at it. Like, have 1,000 candles on this table and none of them have like any flame covers or anything. And it's just like, oh, if you burn the table down or whatever, like we'll charge it to the couple or whatever. It's just like so funny. And like even stuff with drones, like I've never had an issue flying it over in like any of the European countries, but there's been like venues that have said like, no, we don't allow drones here because like we're worried you're gonna like crash it into the building or like, in a tree or damage the property or
I
whatever.
feel like even
Just
if you
like so
crashed it
much
into the
stricter.
building, like it's barely gonna hurt the building. It's gonna hurt your drone, but it's not gonna hurt the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I've never thought about it even like that. Ours was pretty chill. It was only like 40 people, the one that I helped with, but um it was definitely like a super laid back uh Northern England wedding. So it was really fun though. But
Mhm.
um yeah, that's so interesting. As far as like travel tips, I want to touch on this a little bit because I don't know why I feel like I was flying for so many years before I was because of following you that I realized I can take food through TSA. And I was like, hold up, I have so many gut issues and I'm just out here like eating fast food every time I travel because how else am I going to eat if I don't pack myself something? And so during pregnancy, I was like, man, I see Kayleigh take like steak and eggs through security. Like I should pack myself some real food. Um, I'd love to touch on like travel tips, whether it's health, whether it's film related. I feel like everyone's scared of like flying with film, especially
Mm.
internationally. But
Mhm.
first, we can just talk on the health side of it because it's funny. But yeah, I know since you're healthy and I've literally seen your breakfasts on flights, I'm like, you inspired me to like literally pack a lunchbox. I like bought a lunchbox and bring it when I fly now.
Yeah.
Cause yeah,
I
it's like I would fly and I'd get chronically sick. I think the first year of doing a lot of travel weddings, I ended up in the hospital with gut issues like
Oh,
twice.
wow. Wow.
Cause it's like hard to take care of yourself when you're on planes and you don't know if you're gonna get in before dinner time and if there's even a grocery store, like, it was just, like, easier to be unhealthy and yeah, then I ended up in the hospital, so
I
oh.
yeah, so as far as, like, bringing food onto a plane, I feel like most people don't necessarily make the connection, but, like, I mean, you can buy food in an airport and bring it onto the plane, and so I just, like, asked the people at the counter one day, I was like, how are they like, can I just like bring my own food? Like, is that okay? And they were like, yeah, like you can have your suitcase and your bag that goes under the seat. And then if you have a third bag, like as long as it's only food items inside, like we're not gonna say that you have to like fit it or like consolidate it down to two bags. So after
Mm,
that point, I was like, I am bringing a meal on every single flight that I take. Obviously, if it's only like an hour flight or something, I'm not going to, but I like pretty much will always pack myself either like a breakfast or a dinner and just put it in like a little reusable container and then have my little plastic silverware and stuff and bring that on the flight with me. And I always also have a emergency bag of Chomps beef sticks in my suitcase. Regardless if it's like East Coast, West Coast, Europe, like I literally am always like one emergency bag, sometimes two, just in case, because I am the same way. Like if I am without food and trying to like navigate travel and like the stress that comes with that, it just like multiplies things and chaos just seems to abound in those moments. So I'm like, let's just always have food on hand and not have to resort to like going out and getting takeout or fast food or anything like that. Because my diet has always been like so restricted. And I went through a period where I did just straight carnivore for like 7 months. And so I was like, I pretty much can only eat beef. So I'm definitely like going to be relying on my own efforts
Mhm.
for travel stuff. And then as soon as I get to a place, like I mentioned earlier, I pretty much only book Airbnbs because sometimes like hotels I will book, but it's like there's so many limitations on like, most of them will have a microwave, but not a lot of them will have a cooktop. There's like a couple
Mhm.
Marriott and Hilton ones that have like little stoves in the room. So sometimes I'll get those, but I pretty much always in an Airbnb with a kitchen, and I like will pre-route like what's the grocery store that I'm going to go to as soon as I like touch down in this city. And yeah, it's a lot, but I mean, if you have those requirements, like you just kind of have to do what you got to do.
Well, and even if you don't have the most gut issues, you might develop them like me, if you aren't taking care of yourself and if you're just traveling and running yourself dry and, like, eating like, yeah, sure, the airport has food. 1, it's overpriced. 2, it's not healthy, like, even if
Mhm.
there's, like, a real restaurant, like, it's not ideal.
Mhm. It
And
does
who
save a
knows if you'll
ton
have
of money
time,
too. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I was just starving on one of our last flights, and, I had to get something. It was like a burrito for like $12, and I was like, "Gosh darn it, like, why didn't I pack food?" But what I realized too with the lunchbox is you have to live close to the airport to do this, and I had our ice bag confiscated the last time
Oh.
because our hotel didn't have a freezer, but you can pack ice packs, and as
Mhm.
long as it's, like, pretty frozen, like, that doesn't count as a liquid through TSA. So even
Yep.
if you have something you wanna keep cold, maybe you wanna pack, like, hummus or, like, some sort of fruit or who knows what yogurt. Like you can pack that stuff too, and you can literally have it with an ice pack as long as it's like pretty much frozen. So we were doing that, but then I booked a place that had a fridge and not a freezer. So then I couldn't get
Oh,
my ice pack home. But
dang.
I did it for multiple flights before that, which was cool because I didn't realize that either until I saw someone on like TikTok bringing like a smoothie through the airport, but they like froze it beforehand or something. And I was like, oh, that's a good workaround right there.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, film.
Mhm.
Do you do anything special with your film to travel with it? Or are you pretty much like, just get it hand checked, good enough? Or internationally, you know, I know for me, like the Heathrow airport, they would not hand check my film to save my life.
Mhm.
But I'm sure internationally you've had more, not issues, but things that you've had to work around than maybe
For
inside the
sure.
States. Do you have
Yeah.
any specific tips or tricks as far as like being a film photographer, hybrid photographer, traveling both in the States or internationally?
Yes, for sure. So within the States, like I really don't ever have a problem. Although I will say, like, no, lately I've been giving myself more time. On the Holga that I shoot on, I typically will use lomography film. And for whatever reason, I have no idea what it is. Every time I ask for a hand check and I have lomography that I've opened and shot on, it always registers as like picking up a chemical that is like on their no list, basically. And so they're like, now we need to like hand check both of your bags. Like everything in your bags need to be swiped and
Oof.
like checked and stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not like that big of a deal if you are a get to the airport early person, but I'm kind of like a get to the airport like 30 minutes before boarding starts
Same.
person. So now I've had to like adapt to that and be like, okay, like am I shooting this film or not? So I'm going to have to like account for early time because it's probably going to like set the alarms off. But otherwise, the US is like totally fine. The only thing I'd recommend, because I've definitely forgotten to take out film before, is I got like a lead lined bag. So now I just like, even if I'm gonna get it in a hand check, I still put it in the bag just in case something slips my mind and I forget to take it out. Like at least it's gonna run through, and that will save me, at least like 95% of like the pureness of the film. Definitely doing that for international as well, because there are times where they will just tell you no and you got to send it through anyways. Thankfully, most of the international airports are still running on like those small little gray scanners. They're not using like the big white CT scanners, which are like way worse for film. But one thing I ran into recently, I had like kind of a showdown with one of the TSA agents, and I was like, I am hand checking this film, and he was like, you're not hand checking this film. And I was like, I need this film hand checked. Like you have no idea like how many photos have been taken on this. And it was like a mostly film wedding. I was like, I need to preserve this. And I ended up standing there for, I don't know, anywhere from like 20 to 25 minutes. And he was like, you're just gonna have to wait until like we have an extra person to like come and hand check it. Um, But one thing that he said during the encounter, the reason he didn't want me to hand check it was he was like, well, the machine says it's fine up to 1600 film. And so
Mm.
from
That
that
was my
point
issue
on,
in
I was
London.
like, I don't shoot anything higher than 800 film normally, but I was like, I'm going to carry one roll of Delta 3200 film on me for every international wedding. And I don't intend to shoot on it. But when they're like, oh, it's good up to 1600, I'm going to show them the 3200 roll of film and they're going to let me through with a hand check. So that's just like one little tip. It's a $15 tip to bypass like any of those international people who are like, nope, just send it through. It'll be fine. The machines are good up to this ISO. Just show them that and you'll be good. But
Dude,
still have the lead line bag just in case.
that was literally me in Heathrow, and I could not. I mean, I could only wait so long, and also like I had another person with me. They had gotten through. It's like, what do I do? I can't just like stand here, and standing there wasn't going to change their opinions. It was a hard no on anything they said. I think they said 800 below, but I was like, well, this is 800. You're hand checking this. And so literally they went through the film and would only hand check the things that were 800 and above. And I was
Oh
like, come on,
man.
guys, if you're already going to hand check at this point, please. And I was like, it's a wedding.
Just
Like,
wipe
like,
it.
please. And she was like, no. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. And it was something where like we had a morning flight and the airport didn't open till 3:30, but our flight was early. It's like I didn't have that much time to mess around with. Um, yeah, it was a hard no. So, yeah, even if I had had, like, one that was higher, like, literally they went through my film and were like, "Okay, well, this one's 800." And so I got to check like, hand check, like, 5 rolls. It's so dumb.
I feel like the
Um,
amount of time that they spent like being like, oh, this one's
yeah,
not
they could
getting
have
hand
just
checked.
swiped
This
it at
one,
that
yeah, it
point.
would have been so much easier.
And I'm like, "Come on, it's a wedding, like, have some sympathy. You're already gonna hand check, like, a couple." I did face, like you said, where that he was like, "Oh, you'll have to wait." I faced that with pregnancy. I decided a couple times I'd get in my head about going through the scanners so much.
Hmm.
I don't know. I know they say it won't affect anything, but I was just like, "There's no reason for me to be going through all this technology with a human growing inside of me when I could just be hand checked like myself, like my body."
Hmm.
Um, and one airport just made me feel horrible about it. They were like, well, yeah, I guess you could wait like 30 minutes for someone to pat you down." I'm like, just pat me down. I'm pregnant. Like this is a right. Like you do not have to go through the scanners. You can opt for a hand check even if you aren't pregnant. Like you can just
Hmm.
opt to not go through them. And they're like, it's fine. And I was like, tell that to my baby if it has any issues. Like I literally said that. And she was like, I feel like she looked at me like I was threatening her, and I was like, "I'm not, like, trying to be mean, but also, like, why are you putting up such a fight to me just, like, wanting a hand check? Like, why is
Hmm.
this a big deal? I'm, like, massively pregnant, like, just." And I was like, "Screw it, I'll go through the machine, like, we don't have time for this." But I was not happy because every other airport was so chill about it, like, "Yeah, sure, like, go over there, we'll get a woman." She was like, "Well, I guess you can wait, like, 30 minutes, and we'll have someone hand check you." And I'm like, wow, okay, whatever. I don't even know what airport it was, but yeah, film and your own body can be difficult sometimes. Um, but yeah, I mean, you literally don't have to agree to go through the machines, but I guess you have to be willing to wait and have an angry person pat you down.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, internationally is the only time I've ever had issues with film, and I didn't have a lead bag, so I was kind of stressed, but it worked out. The film was fine.
Hmm.
I think definitely if I was doing more international, I would travel with a lead bag just in case for sure, no matter what, because they can be a little more intense. But in America, I've never had any issues. But I
Hmm.
haven't. I wonder what lomography film was that was registering like that.
I shoot just like the regular color stock ones on 400 and 800 ISO. And I know that it was that because like a friend of mine pretty much like only shoots Portra. And I was like, you should get like lomography, like the colors, like for the Holga, you can barely even tell the difference. And I was like, it's so much cheaper. Like you can get a 3-pack for $8 a roll.
Mm.
And as soon as she started using that film, like her first flight, she was like, she texted me, she was like, the scanners just went off. Like now they have to hand check all of my stuff. And like they've never done this before with portrait film. So that's my
Wow.
assumption is because whenever I don't end up shooting on the Holga, like I'm totally fine. But if I do, I know what I'm in for.
One of my biggest issues in the beginning of shooting film and digital was actually finishing my rolls The wedding. Like, it was just, like, when you're shooting on, like, multiple different cameras, actually getting all of them finished was honestly, like, my biggest struggle in the beginning was prioritizing, like, which one when and to make sure I actually finished it.
Mhm.
And, I'd accidentally show up to an airport and be like, "Oh, wow, there's, like, half a roll left in both of these cameras." I've gotten lucky, and some airports don't even care to, like, just hand check the camera.
Mhm.
Um, but some definitely will just say hard no, like, you're kinda, like, blame it on you, just eject the film, like, "Oh, darn, okay." But that was, like, honestly my biggest issue in the beginning was just making sure I actually finished all of the roles, like,
Mhm.
in a manner that made sense, or I'd, like,
Mhm.
finish it the next day, make Jake take some photos of me, and we have, like, the most random photos of
Yeah.
myself, like,
I have so
you
many
know,
of those.
photos, like, in the
Yeah.
airport, just, like
Yep,
oh,
yep.
man.
I have done that before, and I don't know, I've never, like, tested to see if it actually, like, tainted the quality of the film or not, but basically, like, I manually rewound it and, like, took note of, like, I have 16 shots on this or whatever, and then at a later time, I would, like, go and put the lens cap on the camera, so it was just, like, completely blacked out, and then, like, take a picture until I get to, like, shot number 17 and then just continue, and the photos always came out fine. But I don't know if it, ever made it like more grainy or what, but like there was no light ever exposed onto it. So I don't know. I don't know if I should recommend that as a hack or not, but I have done that before.
It's a more complicated hack, but,
It
I
is for
mean,
sure. But if you're
do
like,
it.
I will not waste the second half of this, then there's one answer for you.
I've wasted a lot. Or sometimes I'll just be impatient and, like, say they did hand check and I got it back to LA. Then I'm in LA and I'm like, "I wanna get this developed. I don't wanna go shoot 10 photos." And then I literally
Yeah.
just click rewind. That is my toxic trait, just waste 10 shots. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, money down the toilet. I need to stop doing that. But it's fine. You gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Sometimes I don't wanna wait to go take photos of something, and taking a photo of a random tree doesn't do me any good either, you know?
Sometimes I'll just like randomly, and I always end up deleting them anyways, but like just take random like mirror self portraits with the film camera. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I might as well like at least give these a shot for something I might use, but
Yes.
most of the time I never do
Yeah.
anyways.
We had some leftover film, and I had Jake just, like, take a couple photos of me, like, I guess I don't know, it's just me with the white wall, like, with the stomach, maternity pics, I guess, and then a couple of me with the mic. They actually turned out great. I was like, "Okay, this is worth finishing the role. This is good." Um, but totally wasn't expected, and also I don't really wanna, like, get ready to just finish out a role sometimes, but
So true.
yeah, honestly, balancing I think one of the hardest parts of film isn't knowing how to shoot film, it's knowing how to balance shooting that many cameras on a wedding day and stuff. What would you say for someone that's a beginner? Like, what would you say step 1 to figuring out, um, getting into film? What would you say? Like, I don't even know, I don't wanna ask anything too specific because 'cause I'd love to see what just pops into your mind, but would it
Mhm.
be a type of camera they should start with, or would it be, just implementing it into their workflow? What would you say if someone wanted to get into film? They're like, "I love Kayleigh's film work. How do I get started?" What would you say would be step 1?
I would say probably starting with a point and shoot, just to like take one roll of film and see if it's even not necessarily if it's manageable because like that will grow over time. Like you will get used to it. I started with one film camera and now I shoot on three film cameras and a digital at every wedding. And it was just something that like gets easier over time. But I feel like just starting with something simple and getting the images back and deciding like, do you even really like it? Like I never recommend people start it just because it's like a fad or because it's like a request that couples are having because honestly, like if you don't really appreciate it or like see the value in it, I feel like you're not necessarily going to put that much like creative work into the film shots. Like I don't just duplicate everything on film just because it's film. I like reserve it for shots where I'm like, this lighting is going to look so much better on film than it is on digital. Or like this moment, just like it feels like it needs this camera to capture it, So I would say starting with something simple, like even if it was just like a little Olympus camera, like I've used so many little point shoots and love the way that they look, but ultimately, like for my style being trying to make the film photos like a little bit more high end looking and like really good quality, I kind of moved away from point and shoots. But I feel like it's just good to start with and decide like, do I want to continue pursuing this? Because it's just like such an investment to make. Like if you're going to throw $1,000 into a film camera and not even want to incorporate that on a wedding day, I feel like is just like a really big jump for people to make. So if you can find something in like the $200 range for a film camera and then go from there. And if you're like, you know what, it's not really that hard to do film and digital, and I'm actually really liking the colors and I'm liking the vibe that, the images are going, then, after that, I would say like you can start investing in other stuff. Um, but yeah, I just feel like taking that big leap and then being like intimidated by it wouldn't be a good move.
No, yeah. That's what I normally suggest people, just start with a point shoot. Like, so
Start with
simple.
autofocus also.
Yeah.
Don't start
Or
with
continue
manual
with
focus.
autofocus.
Yes, that's true. I don't
Oh,
have the only
I
other
don't
manual focus
use
that I
manual
use right now
focus,
is the Holga, which I don't even
which,
know if that's manual focus. It's
yeah,
just kind of
it just it just does. Yeah, I don't have a manual focus film camera right now either. That I'm like using at weddings because they do move fast and you need to be able to keep up. And I just feel like
hmm
there's no reason to waste the time, like,
hmm
or
It also like
potentially
kind of
miss
irks me,
moments.
like when I have a photo that's like so close to being in focus, but it's just like slightly not there. Sometimes it's like a great look, but if you're just like repeatedly getting that over and over again, they just drive me crazy. I also have like
Hmm.
terrible eyesight and I don't wear glasses. So I like absolutely need to rely on autofocus.
Can I ask what medium format you're on right now that's autofocus?
I use a Pentax 645N, my
Sweet.
favorite
Yeah, I
camera
know there's
ever.
like isn't there like a ZI too? Z in I.
There's
There's like
something
more of
else.
the in ones, right?
Something basically that
Oh.
allows you to have like all of your camera settings displayed on the film images.
Hmm.
So like I think like the border might be a little bit smaller or something, and so you end up seeing like your shutter speed and your aperture and like all of that data on the actual images when they get scanned. I picked this camera because I saw like a lot of luxury photographers using the Contax 645,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be a dream camera, but I've also talked to a couple of those photographers and none of them even recommended it. Like they were like, this thing breaks so much and it's
They own it for
literally
like the
like a
name.
$6,000 camera with the lens, and the parts are so hard to find because it's like such a high in demand camera that people won't even like add that to the like a list of cameras that they're willing to restore. And so it's like if it breaks, you just kind of have to buy a new one. And I'm like, I was not willing to put that much into a camera.
No.
So the Pentax 645 was my next option. I did like a lot of research and it seemed like it was kind of side by side with the results. So that's the one I went with. And it's honestly my favorite camera ever.
Yeah. No, that's actually I think there's like a second version of the Pentax 645 in as well, like in 2 or something. I
Something.
have no
Yes,
idea.
there's something.
There's something. And those are the 2 that I've looked at for myself for when I do decide to pull the plug on a nicer medium format because I want a nicer medium format. I think for me, it's like juggling it in my workload and on my body. I'm like, oh,
hmm
they are heavier. Like my GA645 is so small and little plastic fits in the fanny pack, and it does take good images, but it'll never take the images of like a real medium format. I know it's
mm.
technically a real medium format, but just like the Holga is a real medium format, it's not giving you
Yeah.
the look that we're talking about, the depth, the way the light hits, you know. I
hmm
actually would love to have one by the time baby's born because I just feel like a little baby on medium format would be so cute. Oh, but priorities. But yeah, the Contact 645, I know that that's like so popular, and I'm like, I don't need to spend that. Don't need to.
hmm hmm
But I do want autofocus for sure in whatever I do invest in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's amazing. And yours is still working? The autofocus is still
Yeah.
working? How long have you
Yep.
had it?
The autofocus is actually paired to the lens, so you can get like whatever like actual millimeter you get. You can either have like an F or an FA, and that one with the A is the autofocus. But yeah, I've had this camera for I got it last November, so I guess like a year, and I've I'm very, very hard on my equipment. So like I always have dials popping off and
Same.
scratches beyond what you could imagine. Like I sold some equipment to KEH when I was like trying to upgrade some stuff. And they literally like marked everything as like the worst quality possible because of how scratched up everything was. I'm just so rough on it, but everything still works. So that's good.
Hey, that's all that matters, honestly. I know for a brief time you were showing just like to Instagram you developing and scanning some of your own film. Do you still do that?
Sometimes I don't do it all the time. It really just depends on like what my wedding schedule looks like. Because if I'm doing 2 to 3 weddings in a month, like it's just never going to get done with
Yeah.
managing literally everything else, all the emails and the marketing and the social media and like editing. But if I'm like a one a month type person, like if that's just what my schedule is allowing, then I definitely will because I love the process and I love the way that it looks. But for me, like I don't outsource anything yet. And that's like the one thing I've had to give up in like my busy season is I can't do it because it's so time consuming.
That's why I don't do it. I'm like, I just would not have the time. Even scanning like my Polaroids, I'm like, I like dread the day. I'm like, no, it takes
Yeah,
so long.
it's
Like,
time. It's time. Ugh.
oh man. And yeah, if I'm gonna do it, it's gonna probably be me. I'm like, that's one thing. Jake does a lot in our business. He works full time with me. And yeah, using like scanning, that's not I mean, he has learned editing, which has been crazy. Because pregnant, I just can't sit for, like, more than maybe, like, 45 minutes to an hour at a time.
Mhm.
And so that was a big adjustment in business because when it hit that that became my reality, I was like, "Wait, how do I edit?" Like, I need to be able to sit for, like, more than 45 minutes. And even podcasting, we had to start batching some episodes out, just be
Mhm.
proactive. So Jake picked up, like, trying his best to basically edit our galleries and then me just do, like, a final sweep, and he's killing it. It's
That's
crazy, like,
amazing.
some of the things he's been able to learn, and I think through being around me, it's like it doesn't feel like I'm just, like, outsourcing it to, like, a random company, but,
Mhm.
someone that's just, like, in the house, I can be like, "Oh, I don't love that," or whatever. But I go back through and do all the black and whites and, like, a final, like, review, but it's crazy
Mhm.
that goes from actually editing to me only editing for, like, 2 hours maybe max,
That's
which is
nice.
crazy.
I've
Yeah,
thought
it feels
about
so
doing that.
weird.
I thought about doing that because my husband like will occasionally shoot with me and he does like a lot of Super 8 for me as well. And I was like, it would be so great. Like we could do so much more if you would just like learn the editing side of it. But I feel like you have to be able to like appreciate and also like agree with somebody's editing style
Mm,
to in order to like actually be their editor. And we just have such different styles. Like he's so like guy style when it comes to color
mm,
and like editing. Like I don't think it would ever match because like it's like if you were to just like randomly change your style or somebody asked you to edit differently, it's like you could give them what they want, but it would be like the most nail dragging process because you're looking at this
so
image and
true.
being like, this doesn't look good. Like this is not something my eye like agrees with or connects with. So yeah, I don't know if I'll ever outsource editing because I don't know. I'm scared of that process. And I also
No,
like enjoy it.
100%.
Like I'm way more of an editor than I am a shooter. Like I'm just like very introverted. And so for me, the shooting is like something I have to get done. But the editing is where I like actually enjoy myself. And I'm like, this is so fun. Like everything is coming to life and I'm like putting the story together. So yeah, I don't know if we'll ever outsource
Yeah,
that.
I liked editing, but your girl can't do it
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, I can, but not really,
Do you have
honestly.
a standing desk?
We used to, and then I never used it. So I think it just got getting I don't know, we probably just gave it away. But yeah, it's weird. Pregnancy is this weird thing of like you really have to listen to your body, and so I can't be as in control of my schedule,
Mm.
which I used to be able to just decide, "Oh, I'm gonna get all this done today." Well, in pregnancy, I might not get anything done for 2 days, and so I have to,
Yeah.
like, learn to adapt, and so my adapting was, like, I'd work for an hour and then I'd, like, cook, so I got into cooking and baking and things, like, I baked so much, I, like, had a basket out for neighbors at one point,
Oh my goodness.
um, but it's, like, I have to either, like, sit and work or go do something or even, like, standing in one position for too long. I almost passed out in the kitchen once, like, it's just it's, like, such an adjustment that I just was not prepared for. Like, I know most people probably listen to their body, but I was someone that was able to just like power through and honestly like work really hard. And I enjoy working, so it was never an issue. But
Mhm.
yeah, Jake actually, as far as editing goes, he when we met was working in a recording studio. So for anyone listening, he like went to school for engineering and is a musician, has projects out on Spotify and stuff. But that is actually why we moved to LA, not for like photography. And so even though he's working with me full time, he's working on his own songs and stuff. But with that, I think comes why he's so good at working in the business, because he's had to like work on other people's music maybe he doesn't like, or when he's engineering like other people's projects, he did a lot of like rap, trap, hip hop, and the PNW, because it was what was popular where we lived. So he's had to kind of just like really make good work out of like any type of style, sound, whatever. And then I think maybe because of the musical background, he's a really good eye. Like it's like first wedding, second shooting, and I was like, yeah, that's better than any other second shooter I've ever had. And so I have no idea. He doesn't even like photography, but he has a natural talent for it. So I'm going to use it while he's willing to like help out, and then I'm
Yes.
sure the times will change and he'll be performing and I'll be shooting less and we'll evolve. But for now, it is really awesome that he can be so helpful. And like the style thing you said, like it isn't an issue, which is super interesting. But I think it's just how his brain works as a creative.
Mhm.
Like he's super adaptable. Adaptable. I hope that's how you say that. But anyways, enough about Jake. Um, Any final film things you want to talk about before we wrap this up? I feel like we've hit on so many good things, and it was so fun to chat with you. I feel like this came so naturally. But film, if you have anything final you want to say about it, or even I know you launched some presets recently that you could tell us about.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I've definitely moved towards like 50-50 with my galleries being like half film, half digital. And I like had presets back in like I think it was 2021 that I like launched original presets. And like now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, like we just evolved so much with our editing. I'm like, how could I ever edit like that? But like back then I was like very much in the mindset of like, I have to make my digital images like look like film. Like I have to fake everything and make it all like look like it was shot on analog. And I've just like totally changed my mindset on that because I think most of it honestly came when I started shooting medium format because with 35 millimeter film, like there's definitely like a distinct style and you have more grain and you like, at least with the context that I use, like I feel like I get such a like distinct look to it that like there's no denying like that this is 100% film. Like it could never be mistaken as digital. But sometimes on the Pentax, I like if I cropped the borders off of it and like put it in a gallery, like you wouldn't even really know the difference sometimes. And so I kind of like looked at that and was like, I kind of want to preserve the differences between the two because like I really like shooting medium format, but I also like I recognize and value the distinctness that comes with digital. And so this time around, I was not creating presets that was trying to like make everything look like film. I was like, I obviously want like the color basis to be the same. Like I want all of the tones to match up and be consistent. Like I don't want to have super, green film and then like have pink images or something. Like I just don't want there to be like, wow, like that's quite a difference. Like you should be able to print it out in an album and have everything like flow seamlessly. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I was like, I just want the digital to be digital and let it be, in all of its beauty and characteristics, and then let the film be film. So yeah, this time around, I was like, these are just for digital, and I want the colors to be something that blends seamlessly and just creates harmony. But at the same time, like definitely allowing for distinction. Like I don't edit grain on any of my photos anymore. I try
Mm-hmm.
and actually make them as sharp as possible. I'm like upping the noise reduction and like increasing sharpening and stuff. It's just funny how our styles change so much. I feel like every year I go through like a little mini crisis, and I'm like, I need to change everything. But I feel like it's starting to slow down where things are becoming more consistent throughout the years, and we'll see. I don't know if it'll change again because I feel like every time I get to a new editing style, I'm like, I love where I'm at now. Like I finally made it, and then lo and behold, something changes.
Yes, I think everyone relates to that. We're always changing. I feel like as an artist, it'd almost be strange if you weren't, like,
That's true.
you know? But
Yep.
I actually agree. I always even sometimes ask clients, I'm like, "When you say you want film, obviously I'm gonna shoot on all my cameras, the good, bad, the great, the shitty on purpose. We're gonna shoot on all of
Yep.
them." But, like, what is it that draws you to it? Because like you
Mhm.
said, honestly, a ton of medium format, like, oftentimes, yeah, it looks digital. Like, when people I think a lot of people that are getting into film don't realize that film can be good, like, and
Mhm.
that good film photos can, in my opinion, be even higher quality than digital photos.
Yep.
Um, and I think still today, even with how far digital cameras have came, at a certain level of film, I do think the quality can definitely be as good or better than digital cameras, which is wild that that's still the case. And I feel like that's why there's so many people that stuck with film when digital cameras came out. Definitely, when digital cameras first came out, film was definitely better. Like,
Yeah.
I think everyone that probably switched to digital, like, if you look back on their work probably got worse for a brief season.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's, like, the look that people expect, which is probably sometimes in today's world a little more of a 35 millimeter look, a little more of a, like, kinda bad on purpose, or maybe
Mm.
not bad, but, kinda messy, grainy, because when the average customer thinks film, they're thinking, like, grainy, disposable vibes sometimes, not all. Some people that know film think of a luxury film look, not as common in my opinion.
Mhm.
So yeah, I even ask my clients sometimes, I'm like, "What do you expect and what do you mean by you want film?" You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I have,
Um,
like sometimes I'll get inquiries where people will mention that they, like, shoot film in their personal life, and I'll just, like, go on their Instagram and stalk them and be like, "Oh, okay, like, they're definitely shooting with, like, a nicer 35 millimeter." So I, like, know where I wanna go with this, and then other times I'll
yeah.
have inquiries where they're like, "We love the look of film," and then I'll go on their Pinterest board, and I'm like, "These are all disposables." So you can kinda get,
Yes.
like, what are you looking for through, just asking or just, like, stalking their Instagram or their Pinterest.
I think one time I literally showed a client a photo. I was like, "Yeah, like, this is film." They're like, "That's film?" I'm like, "Yeah. Yeah, it just looks good, I guess." LOL.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's totally true. And so, yeah, if any of you want a more, it sounds like a little more of a timeless preset pack is what you've evolved into. Maybe I'm putting these words in your mouth, but to me, film is timeless. So getting your digitals to be a little more like film, but not filmy. I think there's a fine difference between like natural and film y. Like when someone says they have
Mhm.
a filmy preset, normally it just means like disposable look. Whereas like a film preset would be a pretty simple
Mhm.
edit,
I like
honestly.
that.
So
Like film, but
yeah.
not filmy. That's a good quote.
Yeah. No, it especially I think even back in the day before film was as popular, there was, like, filmy presets, but they were, like, retro, and it was just, like, blue
Mhm.
highlights, and, like, the dresses were aqua, and I'm like, "Hold up, guys. This isn't even really happening in film that much. Maybe if you're using a weird film. But why are we turning dresses, like, aqua blue? I don't know what is going on." But that was, like, maybe 3 or 4 years that was popular. But anyways, moral of the story, you guys, go check them out. Go check out the presets. Go check out Kayleigh's work. If you don't follow her, like, go follow her. Her work is so good, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
If you guys loved this interview, feel free rate us, subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, and we'll catch you guys next week. Bye, everyone.